Here at CBR, you know we can't just enjoy a movie without carefully scrutinizing every last line of dialogue, even when it's a 3-hour-long film we've been waiting a decade for. While we were excited to see our heroes put an end to the Mad Titan in Avengers Endgame, we were also looking for hints about the next big villain of Phase 4. And there was one line of dialogue that makes us think we may know exactly who it is. We had been getting teased about Thanos becoming a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe ever since we first spotted that troublesome fake Infinity Gauntlet in Odin's vault in the first Thor movie. Seriously, why did he even have that among all of his valuable treasures? That's one of the many MCU questions we might never have an answer to. But the point is that we knew Thanos was coming for a long time. Even before we saw him lurking around in the mid-credit scene from the Avengers, there were hints the Mad Titan was going to be making an appearance sometime soon. The movie Avengers Endgame was the culmination of everything, but of course we couldn't just be satisfied with that. We had to start looking towards the next big unknown, which in this case is Marvel's Phase 4. We know Spider-Man Far From Home will draw Phase 3 to a close, but Marvel Studios has been characteristically tight-lipped about the fourth phase of Marvel movies. We think that one seemingly innocuous bit of dialogue from Endgame might have given up a huge hint. After the decimation, our heroes find Thanos, and while this time Thor aims for the head, the victory still feels hollow. The world's a mess. Everyone is still gone, and Natasha Romanoff steps up to make sure things don't get any worse. It's a thankless job, which forces her to subsist on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But she does have some help. Nebula, Rocket, and Captain Marvel watch the skies. Rhodey watches the new creepy Clint Barton, and Okoye reports on Wakanda. During one of their meetings, Okoye reveals that there was a massive underwater earthquake off the coast of Wakanda. When Natasha asks what she's going to do about it, Okoye says nothing, which is a fair response, because even with all their advanced technology, Wakanda can't prevent underwater earthquakes. Our heroes sometimes fight with the forces of nature, but they don't really fight against them. That meeting wrapped up, and soon Steve Rogers and Scott Lang showed up to move the plot of the movie along. But what about that underwater earthquake off the coast of Wakanda? Okoye sure didn't seem concerned, but could this have been a major Marvel movie hint? Many comic book fans couldn't help but remember some notable instances of conflict in the waters of Wakanda, perpetuated by a character we haven't seen just yet in the MCU. And before you call us crazy for looking so far into a single comment, consider the whole quantum realm and time travel thing. This was a major part of the storyline of Endgame, and the only reason our heroes were able to undo the decimation. It was something we'd never seen before in the MCU, and yet somehow we all saw it coming. Why? Because during the mid-credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne warned Scott Lang to be careful of time vortexes within the quantum realm. That one little line of dialogue held a ton of significance and was a major hint about what was going to come during Avengers Endgame. So is it really so crazy to think that Marvel might have included a big clue hidden in a throwaway line during Avengers Endgame? We don't think so. Now, let's talk about the Black Panther franchise for a minute. The first movie was a big hit, and we know Marvel Studios has given the green light to a sequel. However, in typical Marvel Studios fashion, they've been stingy with the details. And although we may like to hope and theorize otherwise, it seems almost certain that we'll be seeing a new villain because Erik Killmonger ain't coming back. We know he was really great and sometimes crazy things happen in the MCU, but come on, the first stage of getting over grief is acceptance. Killmonger's gone, which is very sad. But this means we need an all-new villain for Black Panther 2. If you're a fan of Marvel comic books, you probably see where we're going with this. But if you're not, then let us introduce you to Namor the Submariner. He's the son of a human sea captain and an Atlantean princess, and calling him the Marvel version of Aquaman would be doing him a serious disservice. He's a complex, compelling, and multifaceted character, who was once ranked right up there with Captain America in terms of comic book popularity. His disposition is nebulous at best, and he's had more than a few run-ins with Wakanda in the comic books. So when we heard about a massive underwater disturbance near Wakanda, how could we not have immediately thought of Namor? One of the greatest things about Namor is that he isn't strictly a villain. He's clashed with our heroes and the people of Wakanda many times, but he isn't always the bad guy. He can be anything from an outright villain to an anti-hero to a legitimate superhero, and we love that he keeps us guessing. By having him show up as a villain, we could get an exciting character arc and some incredible conflicts with the existing cast. And this isn't the only time we've been teased with having our favorite aquatic-themed character joining the MCU. We could have been getting hints as early as the movie Iron Man 2 in 2010. When Tony Stark and Nick Fury meet up to discuss the Avengers Initiative, they're surrounded by screens depicting superhero-related events around the world. If you were looking carefully, you might have seen an area highlighted off the coast of Brazil. It was an area that hasn't been featured in any Marvel movie so far, but it seemed like a plausible location for the underwater city of Atlantis. The location seems to put it somewhere between Brazil and Africa, which coincides with the location Okoye was reporting on in Endgame. Even Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige claims to be a huge fan of Namor, and has wanted to include him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for quite some time. So what's the holdup? No, it's not a compelling storytelling reason. It's more character copyright red tape. Seriously, that seems to be the only enemy our Marvel heroes can't defeat. Bureaucracy. The problem is that the rights to Namor are owned by Universal Pictures. But just because Disney doesn't have the rights doesn't mean they can never use the character. It just makes things a little bit more complicated. As recently as 2018, Kevin Feige talked about wanting to utilize Namor in the MCU and working out the complicated process of getting permission to do so. But it's definitely possible. Just look at Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. They're both parts of the MCU, despite technically being owned by Sony and Universal respectively. But let's talk about how Universal owns the Hulk and Namor. Marvel Studios does own the film production rights to the Hulk, which is why he's able to appear as a supporting character in movies like The Avengers and Thor Ragnarok. However, Universal owns the distribution rights to Hulk, meaning if Marvel wants to make a standalone Hulk movie, Universal will need to be the one to put it out in theaters and reap the reward. This doesn't sit well with the mouse, which is why we doubt we're going to see a standalone Hulk movie anytime soon. So while Namor may be an incredible character worthy of his own standalone movie, it seems unlikely that he'll get it because of this behind-the-scenes ownership issue. Instead, it's a much safer bet to assume he'll show up as an antagonist or a supporting character in another franchise or multiple franchises. Hey, it certainly worked out for the Incredible Hulk. It seems like everyone is rooting for Namor to show up in the MCU. So why Wakanda? Well, let's just say the Submariner and Black Panther don't always see eye to eye. Okay, that was maybe the understatement of the century. We mentioned earlier that Namor's personality is often nebulous at best, and he can either be a hero or a villain depending on the situation. In this way, he's similar to Loki, who is one of the most popular villains the MCU has ever seen, and as far as where Loki is, it's also complicated. He was killed by Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, but we saw him take off with the Tesseract in Avengers Endgame, and we know he's getting his own show on the Disney streaming service. So basically, we wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him show up in the MCU movies, or at least for the foreseeable future. It seems like he has a lot going on at the moment. In the early days of the comic books, Atlantis was considerably damaged by earthquakes, like the one Okoye mentioned in Avengers Endgame. One of them even caused the death of Namor's mother, Princess Fan. It turns out the earthquakes were caused by an item known as the Serpent Crown, which was later used to wipe Namor's memory. When he got his memory back from the Human Torch, he decided that he wasn't so fond of humans, despite teaming up with them in the past. He's fought against the Avengers, and has had dealings with the Fantastic Four. He even caught feelings for Sue Storm, which were briefly reciprocated. Not only would introducing Namor into the MCU give us an exciting new character and open up the world of Atlantis, it could also lay the groundwork for introducing the Fantastic Four. Because as we all know, the rights to those characters are finally obtained by Disney from Fox. Yes, we've seen the Fantastic Four on the big screen before, but this awesome superhero team has never really had a good movie. Their films are pretty much universally panned, and the first time they were even in a movie, it was so terrible that it was never released, and Marvel tried to have all copies of it destroyed. Of course, you can still find it on YouTube, but we don't recommend it. Seriously, it's not good. It's bad. Not only does Namor have dealings with many current MCU characters, but he could be a bridge between the MCU and heroes we haven't met yet, if he's introduced in Black Panther 2. You might think that, as someone who lives in a secretive city under the sea, Namor wouldn't have to worry about getting into disputes with other countries, but you'd be way wrong on that. Because it turns out there's pretty much nobody that Namor won't feud with, and he and T'Challa have notably crossed paths numerous times. Honestly, attacking Wakanda is a bold move, and one few people could pull off. Not only does it have a pretty tight security force, but it also has access to incredibly advanced technology and a stockpile of vibranium. And that's not even taking into account the Black Panther himself and all of the allies he has to call upon. In order to oppose Wakanda, you'd have to present a huge threat, and Namor is one of the few characters capable of doing so. There was even a time when Namor flooded Wakanda in an effort to take out the Avengers, a devastating event which claimed many lives. Although many of the things Namor does impacts Wakanda negatively, some of them could make interesting developments. At one point, Namor attempts to recruit T'Challa onto his side, which leads to Shuri becoming the new Black Panther. It's a move that many Marvel fans wouldn't mind seeing. And it involves not only the Fantastic Four, but the X-Men, heroes also recently acquired by Disney. Now, we're not saying that all of this is going to go down in Phase 4. While Marvel Studios is quiet about the details, we have a feeling it's going to take quite some time to build up all of these storylines. But introducing Namor in Black Panther 2 would certainly be an excellent start, and it would mean endless possibilities. Now that Thanos is gone and Loki is who knows where, the MCU is definitely in need of a new villain. Introducing a villain who could also become a hero someday would be a smart move, and it's one we think Marvel Studios is eager to make. If DC's Aquaman movie was such a success, imagine what Marvel could do with their very own aquatic superhero. Of course, they won't have Jason Momoa, but we think we'll be able to move past that. What do you think about the idea that Avengers Endgame hinted at the introduction of Namor the Submariner? Do you think it's a valid prediction, or are we just treading water here? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section below, and then click on the subscribe button for more videos from CBR. Bye for now.